Good afternoon, everyone. Let's imagine this. It's year 2050, and above our heads, tens of thousands of satellites orbit the Earth. From space, our planet no longer glows with just blue and green. It shimmers with the reflection of the solar panels and the metallic hulls of all the satellites and all the debris around Earth. All those satellites, they represent human innovation and ambition, but each also carries a footprint, an environmental cost that until recently we rarely spoke about it. We always have looked to space as a symbol of progress and hope. Yet today, the very frontier that inspired us is becoming congested, contested, polluted. And that's why Europe has engaged in a new chapter, one where sustainability doesn't stop at the edge of our atmosphere. Space activities are essential to our lives. I'm seeing all of us carrying our phones. We know that. We are using space data and services every single day. Earth observation, communication, navigation, climate monitoring, and many, many, many more applications. But launches and reentries release emissions and particles into upper atmosphere, as we heard early this afternoon. A single CubeSat, for example, can leave a carbon footprint of up to 2 tons of CO2, and reentries, as we heard today, can also release aluminum oxides that damage the ozone layer. So the paradox is actually quite striking. The satellites that help us fighting climate change are also becoming part of the problem. So the European Commission's answer as a regulator in Europe is to make sustainability in orbit as fundamental as the sustainability on Earth. And this is not only a technological challenge, it's also a moral one, because this also implies applying it to our own EU space program, Galileo, Copernicus, EGNOS, IRA². So the Commission vision is very clear. If we can measure the impacts of space activities, we can manage them. And if we can manage them, then we can make space activities more sustainable. So that vision, and if for those who read already the proposal of the European Space Act that we presented last June, builds on 3 pillars: safety, resilience, and sustainability. Safety means keeping our orbital free of collisions and debris, something that we have been talking here over and over today, and tomorrow for sure we will continue. Resilience means making sure that our systems can withstand threats. It can be from space weather or can be from cyber attacks. We have to keep resilience. We have to be resilient. And sustainability means, of course, reducing the environmental footprint at every stage in a satellite's life. That includes also launch and reentry. So to make this vision real, Europe is developing what we call the rules of the road. The EU Space Act is an example, but another one is also the EU Space Traffic Management approach. So imagine space as a vast highway. Satellites are the vehicles, debris are the potholes, and so far there have not been there's only a few traffic lights and a fewer speed limits, and I will even dare to say not a lot of speed tickets. So the EU approach aims precisely at changing this. It aims at defining how we access, how we operate, and how we return from space safely and sustainably. So this approach covers everything from space situational awareness, so knowing what is out there, to debris mitigation and remediation, and responsible management of orbits. It includes how we design the satellites for end-of-life disposal or controlled reentry, and this vision is not about restricting innovation. It's about ensuring that innovation can continue without turning orbit into a scrapyard. But the real transformation lies in bringing lifecycle thinking to space. Other industries already use the lifecycle assessments to measure environmental impacts. Andrea just mentioned that For the last 12 years, ESA is also applying this to some of the projects, including Galileo, Copernicus, Ariane 6, etc. So it's also not new in our sector. And the space sector is, of course, embracing more and more this digital and this green and clean transition in the past years. However, from the regulator perspective, has it never had a common standard for measuring environmental performance, making this work challenging. And this is what we are also aiming to change. So the European Commission is developing the product environmental footprint category rules for space, short name to facilitate the PEFCR-Space. And think of it as a sustainability guide to solve the footprint equation for environmental performance of space activities in a consistent way. So PEFCR-Space aims at three things. First, standardize how we measure impact, ensuring transparent and comparable data across the sector. Second, it helps businesses and policymakers to make better, more informed, and more sustainable choices. And third, it aligns space activities with the European Green Deal and European ambition for climate neutrality by 2050. And this is not a small effort. The European Commission is working closely with ESA, the European Space Agency, but also with private organizations that in total, they represent more than half of the European space market, but as well is working with NGOs, with universities and research centers and national space agencies. And this autumn, actually today, we are in a very, very important milestone. So starting on the 15th of October, the first draft of the PEFCR-Space is open for consultation. So everything that this group of people, of brilliant minds that have experience in the field on how we can do this, reach a first draft of how we can have this sustainable guideline, this footprint equation guideline. And so it's now open for consultation for 6 weeks. So industry, researchers, NGOs, citizens, anyone and everyone can actually have a voice in shaping how we measure the environmental footprint of space activities. And this is one of the ways of Europe saying we are not doing sustainability to the space sector, we are doing sustainability with the space sector, with you. That consultation will lead with the pilot studies in 2026, so it means that we are going to pick up this draft after your comments, and we are going to test it in real-life cases. And this will allow us to test, of course, and by the end of 2027, we have the ambition to have a finalized standard, a model for the world on how to balance exploration, innovation, and environmental stewardship. This is more than a technical framework, and I would like to highlight this. It's actually a cultural shift. It means moving from a launch and forget mentality. We launch, put in orbit, we forget, it's done, there. Then we get worried in 25 years, as Vijay was saying, on the next 5 years when I need to do something about it. But it's actually a cultural shift to change to a full cycle responsibility, a full life cycle responsibility. It means empowering the engineers like Vijay and others to think not only about performance and precision, but also about emissions and innovation, digging deeper into the choice and use of materials and end-of-life design. So sustainability becomes a default and not an afterthought. And it connects directly to the cause of sustainability that brought us here today and why it matters to everyone, absolutely everyone. Because sustainability in space is part of building a more sustainable Europe and a more sustainable world. Innovation ensures access to responsible finance, builds resilience in a world that increasingly depends on us, on the space-based systems. As we look ahead, the challenge is, of course, enormous. We already heard some of the challenges that we are facing. We know that there are the challenges, but it's also an opportunity. by embedding environmental sustainability into every phase of the space activity, we can set a global benchmark for responsible space exploration. We can show that technological excellence and environmental protection are not opposites, they are actually partners. So let's turn to that image of the sky filled with the satellites and the shimmering and the solar panels shining in the sky, and we don't see anymore our blue pale dots. Each of one of those lights actually tells the story of human innovation. But it should tell also a story of responsibility. Because every orbit, every launch, every satellite, every reentry are a chance for us to act wisely. So Europe Action ensures or aims at ensuring that we reach for the stars. We do so without losing sight of the planet that made it all possible. Sustainability in space is not just about protecting our environment up there. It's about protecting the perspective we gain because we are there. The view that reminds us how fragile and extraordinary our home planet is. Thank you.